allow public participation in a manner consistent with social distancing practices, the following procedures are in effect for the meeting. Members of the public will not be allowed into the meeting room, but may view the meeting on a live broadcast via WebEx, the WebEx internet platform, or via recording once available on the Commission's website. Remote testimony will be accepted on all items from persons registered to speak by video conference or by phone following opening remarks and administrative announcements. If you would like to present oral testimony remotely, please register through the WebEx internet platform. Written testimonies. Written testimonies, including the testifier's address, email address, and phone number, will be available to the public on the Commission's website. As a courtesy, please turn off all cell phones for the duration of the meeting. Commission Aide George White, would you please call the roll to confirm the attendance of commissioners at this meeting and the presence of a quorum?
Yes, Chair Mould. Chair Mould is present. Vice Chair Wong. Commissioner Bean, present. Commissioner Legal. Excused for now. Commissioner Aki Peters. Commissioner Fu Fan. Excused for now. And Commissioner Stormo Gibson is excused, Mr. Chair. You do have a quorum.
Mahalo, Mr. White. Given the presence of a quorum, let us continue on with our agenda and the business of the Commission. Members, before you are the minutes of our July 28th, 2021 meeting, which supplement the video recording of that meeting available on the Commission's website. Is there a motion to approve the minutes of the July 28th, 2021 meeting? Thank you, Commissioner Peters. Is there a second? Thank you, Vice Chair Wong. Absent objection to this motion, do we have unanimous consent to approve said minutes? With unanimous consent, so ordered. And Commissioner Fucan is present. Fam is present. Is that right? Okay. Thank you. Aloha. Before continuing with the Commission's business, we will now proceed to the remote testifiers. To those coming in remotely, please video conference from a quiet location and mute your television. Also, be sure that your microphones and cameras are in working order. For those joining us by phone, we will identify you by your phone prefix. If technical issues arise, I will give you a few moments to try to resolve minor connection issues. However, if it cannot be resolved, I will have to move on to the next testifier. When I call your name, please state your full name and the agenda item or items you are testifying on. Speakers are limited to 1 minute, to a 1-minute presentation on each item. When the timer goes off, please conclude your remarks promptly. I will close testimony once all remote speakers have testified. We have testifier Ellen Carson on WebEx. Welcome, Ms. Carson. And you know, we're going to be pretty flexible about the 1 minute. I see you've also provided us with written testimony that was very useful. Thank you very much for that. We've noted this, but please go ahead, take away the floor, Ms. Carson.
Thank you so much. I appreciate the Commission's time. And for those of you that are serving, I really appreciate you thinking forwardly about these types of things for our county. I'm speaking, my full name is Ellen Godby Carson. I'm speaking on behalf of the Church of the Crossroads in Honolulu, Hawaii. We have before you a resolution and testimony, in which we seek an empty homes tax for Honolulu, and something that would be more broad-based in terms of consideration of how our tax policy could better face our housing crisis. As you know, we're all in a housing crisis here that affects each one of us. And what we are seeking is an empty homes tax to apply to all real properties not occupied by either the homeowner or by a long-term resident who is there at least 6 months a year as their primary residence here in Hawaii. We seek it through a substantial tax that has progressive tiers and that would be based on assessed value. This could incentivize the conversion of existing housing stock to serve Hawaii's critical housing needs. And we believe it should be earmarked for the purpose of alleviating our affordable housing crisis as well as our homelessness crisis. The advantage of this type of tax is that it could result in converting thousands of housing units currently already in our stock to housing for local residents instead of them being for vacation spots or for investment. This could happen without any new construction costs. It could happen without any months or years of delay in permit and planning and finding developers. It could occur without adverse impact on either the homeowners or the residents who are long-term renters in Hawaii. And it would do so without mandates. It would allow the freedom of choice of how to use one's property. It would simply impose a much higher tax if one chooses to use real estate, residential properties in the state for something besides housing, which is our critical need. So thank you, and I really laud what you're doing here in terms of looking at broader-based issues where tax policy could make a big difference in our state. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Godby Carson, for that testimony. Are there any other testifiers? There being no other testifiers, testimony, are there any other testifiers? Let me just do one last check. No, there are not. There being no other testifiers, testimony is now closed. So on to commission goals, objectives, and timetable. Council Resolution 17-112 and 19-199 provide that this commission shall conduct a systematic review of the city's real property tax system's valuation methodologies, classes, exemptions, credits, and minimum property tax using such standards as equity and efficiency. At this point, commissioners, I would like to open the floor to general discussion regarding the goals, objectives, and timetable for our work. And Commissioner Legal is present now, so I'd like to acknowledge his presence.
Sorry, I forgot to join the meeting.
Okay, so now this is an open discussion on what our goals and objectives we think should be for the commission this year. Based on sort of the guidance that we received, equity and efficiency are kind of our guiding principles to see whether the Oahu real property tax structure right now is structured in such a way that will provide for equity and efficiency. I think you all have seen, the past years, they've broken it down into, 3 subcommittees. We'll talk about those subcommittees later, but those give a pretty good idea of how the commission has worked in the past. In speaking, I've had some conversations with staff and with, at council with folks in the community. I think from my standpoint, just to get the conversation started here, I think there's a lot of talk right now about housing affordability and how it's running out of control a little bit, and how it's not affordable for local residents. And so I think at a sort of a high overarching level, one of our goals should be assessing the code, the property tax code, to see whether it's serving local residents and allowing for sort of longer term goals of affordability to be achieved.
Certainly, Commissioner Wong here. I agree with the sentiments of Chair Gold and Chair Mold, and agree that the focus on residents of Oahu, since they're the ones who actually pay and actually deal with the consequences of living here. I think they have the most at stake during these discussions. In addition to the equity of the real property taxes, I think it's important that we also note the efficiency and we make sure that the tax process is fair for those involved. This is a part of making that process fair and having community input in this process, but also during the assessment and the appeals and the implementation of any new tax proposals or recommendations that we would adopt or at least recommend to the legislature. So I think that the fairness to the residents and not just the structure, but also in the ways of it is being implemented and also in how we treat taxpayers in Hawaii, just, and how their taxpayer bill of rights is being honored.
Thank you, Vice Chair Wong.
Chair Peters, I think the theme we're hearing is fairness and equity, and I agree totally with that. When it comes to being fair, I think whatever recommendations we end up coming up with for the council, I hope we look at the wherewithal to pay by the taxpayers. In other words, I think the tax burden should be shifted more to the people who have the ability to pay more. So I hope that's kind of the direction we'll be going in.
Thank you, Commissioner Peters. I think that is a principle of equity, right? Which,
Mr. Chair, this is Jack Legal, Commissioner Legal.
Hello, Commissioner Legal.
Equity and fairness, I think the challenge that we have is basically trying to find a balance between building affordability and also raising revenue for the city and county of Honolulu. I think a lot of times those two objectives run against each other, because we want more money, but then we want more affordable homes. And when we do that, we try to tax a certain segment of society that can come up with the money that the city needed to balance its budget. So part of that equity, I think, and fairness is to be able to just find this balance, that how much the city needs and how much affordable homes do we need, so that we can live together happily, whatever, a happy medium, things like that, because it seems to me that the approach that we take is almost like we tax the rich so that we can create affordable homes or so that we can get money for the city. So we need to really find a good balance between the two. So if we're talking about equity and fairness, I think that's where it lies.
Thank you.
Chair Mold, this is Commissioner Tracy Bean. If I could just speak to that really quickly. Good point, Commissioner Legal. One of the things that I think we really need to take into consideration when we're looking at equity is, well, maybe a good example would be the taxation, property taxation and the tiers, and how there's a differentiation between properties under $1 million and properties over $1 million. I think when that, when we were looking at the tier system and how we would tax those who are, capable of paying more, for instance, we were looking at it when property values were far below what they are now. Now, the median home income or the median home valuation is at nearly $1 million. And so what was intended to tax those who are capable of paying more is now a tax that is really aimed at the median income taxpayers. And so if we're looking at equity, we're going to have to continue to look at it in a new way and maybe look at a sliding scale whereby that taxation tier moves as property values move as well.
Thank you, Commissioner Bean.
This is Commissioner Pham. I would agree that the overall sentiment of equity is what should be the goal of this commission. As alluded to by other commissioners, that does look to me like shifting to tiered systems and looking at property tax rates that shift the burden of meeting our city's revenue needs through property taxation to those who can most afford it under the definition of equity. That is what I believe would be most equitable. Another point about the resolution regarding efficiency, I would like to point out if we are focused on the effects of property taxation on housing affordability, one thing I would like to consider is looking at a land value tax and shifting our systems this way, just because here in our island community, we have a limit on the available land for housing or for development in general, which is a contributing factor to the rising costs. So looking at how that could be leveraged in the future is something that I believe would be both equitable and efficient. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Pham. Very interesting.
I have a question, Chair. Have we ever defined what is affordable for Hawaii? What is affordable means? Have we ever defined that? What is affordable?
That's
Yeah.
a very good question.
What is affordable? Yeah, we would talk about affordable, but yes, I think Pham has an answer.
Yes. Hi, Commissioner Pham. According to the state of Hawaii, it is 140% of the AMI, the area median income. That's the definition that the state uses. However, the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development uses a cost burden approach, saying that when costs exceed a household's 30% of a household's income, that includes rent and utilities or mortgage and utilities, then they are considered to be cost burden. Therefore, their housing is unaffordable. So it's a sliding scale, and it really depends on how much people make. So
I think, yeah,
it
I
varies.
think I understand Commissioner Pham, the definition on the HUD and the state. But I think you brought up a good point. I think it should be based on the income of people in Hawaii, not the HUD statement, because they gather all this information from all over the states and they come up with this 140% of the AMI. But you look at the income of residents in Hawaii, can they really afford an affordable homes? They can't. When it starts at $500,000 for affordable homes, or 600,000, whatever, I just shake my head because I'm involved now with a nonprofit organization, the Hawaii Homeowner. I think I talked to you about it, the Homeownership of Hawaii. And we've been buying properties with the help of this grant from the state. Like, for example, we bought a property in Ewa Beach for $430,000, and we're selling it for $395 to a first-time home buyer, because that's what they can afford. And especially in this market where there's a lot of multiple offers, I think Tracy can understand this. Multiple offers. There's no way that somebody who is not making a lot of money will be able to win in a multiple offer situation. No way. That's why a lot of first-time home buyers, those who are in affordable homes, cannot afford to buy a home in Hawaii because of this definition of what we have, 140% of whatever it is, 120% of AMI, 80% of AMI, whatever it is, And it's still a mystery to me when we say affordable, Yeah. And I've been a realtor so many years, so yeah.
Hi, this is Chair Mold,
That's
and I think
my
we should
beef.
be thinking of
So,
in terms of rents as well. I mean, we should also be a large majority of our population are renters. So how do we how does the property tax affect rents as well? Is an important thing to look at. And there's a report recently came out by the and I'll share it with everyone on the commission, from the National Low Income Housing Coalition. And this gets to like basing affordability based on someone's ability to pay or income level. But the 2021 report for the National Low Income Housing Coalition ranked Hawaii the worst in terms of the gap between someone's income and their ability to pay rent. I'll share that. So I do think that's another way kind of to look at it is on sort of an income basis. And what's someone's normal basket of goods they would buy, and how that compares to the wages they can bring in and the rents that they pay, and what percentage that rent is. So
Yeah, you know what, Chair Wood and Commissioner Pham, you talk about land, right? I mean, Hawaii is really unique because there is a lot of stakeholders involved in trying to get a land to build affordable homes. You have the neighborhood board. First, you have to go to the neighborhood board, and when you go to the neighborhood board, they'll say no more development in this area, zero development. Like for example, I've been with the neighborhood board for so many years in Kapolei, and there is always a big resistance. Not in my backyard, in Nimbus, not in my backyard. You're not going to build affordable homes in my backyard, So there's another, I think, element in trying to build affordable homes when you have to convince the community that it is important to have affordable homes. So it's not just about money. You also have to take about the stakeholders, the community, who are a lot of times are NIMBYs, I'm not in my neighborhood. You guys are bringing something in there. You're not here, So it's very frustrating because it is an element that the city has added, I think, as part of the what do you call that, permitting process. You have to go to the neighborhood board. You have to go to the neighbors, present your project or whatever it is, and there you go. You get a lot of opposition. Look what happened to the one in Kaneohe, right? There was a big opposition by the neighborhood board. It was squashed. The project was squashed. It didn't go through. So I just want us to realize that there is a lot of other things that are at stake when we talk about affordable and building houses and trying to get land, build homes.
yes, it's a complex issue for sure. So
Yeah.
I think what I'm hearing from commissioners is a consensus that, one of our goals should be looking at the affordability of housing stock on Oahu and the contribution or impact that Oahu's real property tax code has on that, and maybe what kind of ability the tax structure could have in bending the arc in the right direction towards a more affordable Oahu. Does that sound like a
Yeah,
close?
I think, yeah. No, there is one suggestion here. I want to get your opinion on this, because on the RSA, the tiered system, the proposal or the idea was not to use the market price, but rather the median price, and then use maybe 130% or 140% of the median price. This is what Trace was talking about, because now the median price is about $1 million now, right? Close to $1 million anyway. And it might still go up. So half of the populations in Hawaii will be race A, when the median price goes up to 1.3 million. So when you tie it up to the median price, let's say 130%, this is her example. Using the current median price of 1 million, for example, if race A applies to homes valued at 130% of median, then the threshold would be 1.3 million. So that kind of idea, I think that we need to maybe just think about it. Okay, yeah, that's something to think about. Tie it up to the median price, so that as the median price go down, like for example, it goes down to, if it goes down to 900,000, for example, the receipt threshold would be lowered to 1,170,000. That's still over $1 million, right? But it's now tied to the median price rather than the market price. something to think about.
Yeah, so I think that's a good sort of goal as well, is there some threshold number, particularly when it comes to, is it Bill 20?
I think it's Bill
They're-
20. Yeah.
Yeah, in Bill 20, they're looking at raising it to 1.3 and then to have other
Yeah.
tiers. You know, I think a question for us is to, you know, what should those tiers be, right?
Yeah.
Trying to determine that. Another area, pardon if I move on, that I'd like to consider as a goal is, is there a way for, you know, to build sort of capacity to enforce and collect taxes that is, which would be an efficiency measure? Could there be like investments using, you know, stimulus dollars from the federal government that may be coming in to build systems and capacity that could serve the people of Oahu better? I want to, you know, put that forward as a potential goal to look at. Does anyone have thoughts on that?
Can you expound on it a little bit, Chair Wood? Can you expound it a little bit? What is really trying to do?
So
You're
do we
seeing the
have,
stimulus.
you know, do we have enough, you know, are there enough people working in the Department of Budget and Fiscal Services right now? Are they being, you know, paid a fair wage or a wage that will bring in the best and brightest?
I see.
You know, you know, so can we use federal dollars that may be coming in through the American Rescue Plan and the infrastructure package that we know is coming down the pike to build capacity at BFS? You know, create maybe, you know, I've seen testimony where, you know, our systems are limited to only allowing us to have 3 tiers in our residential system. I think it's a shame that if we think a 5-tier system would serve the people of Oahu better, that the technical limitations are holding us back from having a 5-tier system instead of a 3-tier system. So is there, and I saw a number, something like $13,000 to add a new tier. Well, if we want to add 2 more tiers, maybe there's money out there. Maybe there's another $26,000 out there to put in another 2 tiers. So that's something I'd like to consider.
Yeah, we can explore that. I think, you know.
Yes.
We can even use the stimulus money for that. So we'll see.
Yeah. So anyway, I don't mean to monopolize the time here. Does anyone have any additional comments or goals and objectives that they would like to bring to the floor for discussion?
You know, it just occurred to me. I think we go all over the place on this one, like the taxing the empty vacant homes. Yeah, have we talked about it yet? No.
You know, I think we're going to see that. I mean, I don't think we're going to talk about specific items yet. We're talking about sort of overarching goals and objectives right now.
Okay. Sorry.
There will be time to discuss that.
Okay. All right.
Yeah. So hearing no other additions, thank you, Commission. Thank you, Commission Aide White. So on the timetable, I mean, I think between now and the beginning of December, if we meet every 3 weeks, that's essentially getting us to the beginning of December when the other commissions have filed reports. Now, Chair Waters has indicated to us a flexibility to either, you know, submit interim reports earlier or submit an interim report in early December and even actually extend our time later to January. If anyone has any thoughts about a preferred timetable for our work and what deliverables we want to include. I mean, do we want to do our final report the first week in December, which is generally what's happened the last couple times? Do we want to do an interim report with a potential follow-on report in January to extend our work, given the, you know, given it's a lot we have on the table? I don't know if between now and December is going to be enough time to do all the research that I envision us doing.
Why do we shoot for December? I mean, try our best, and if we can get some work done, then we're ready to make an interim report. We'll do an interim report. Yeah.
I think that's what I was thinking as well. Like, let's shoot for having our final report in early December, but knowing that if we need to do more follow-on items,
Yeah.
we have the opportunity to go into January. Would that
Yeah.
work for people?
Yeah, I think that would work because I think there's a lot of work. I mean, it's a lot of meetings, before we can compile everything,
Right.
I think we have to keep in mind the objective, assist the city council. So issuing a report by 2019, I mean, not 2019, by December, would definitely assist with the council meeting and deliberating on these bills. I think we want to be of as much assistance to them as we can.
Good point.
So having that on, we can expand if we determine that an item needs more deliberation. We can issue a subsequent report, but I think assisting the city council should be our primary objective. And I think a December deadline is urgent, but I don't think it's impossible.
Yeah. September, October.
If I can make a comment, this is Commissioner Tracy Bean. I was reading through some of the previous advisory commission reports, and even as far back as 2017, one of the things that they were saying is that although Resolution 17-112 calls for the commissions to be appointed before July 1st, it seems like they're making a strong suggestion that this particular commission requires a little bit more time, it appears. And so, I was wondering if it had ever been considered, or had the council really considered creating this commission and naming people to the commission far earlier than the July 1st date, because it does seem that more time is really required to put together a report that could really aid the council in what they're doing. Thank you.
I think we can absolutely consider that, that recommendation. I think that's a good one. Thank you, Commissioner Bean. I think one other thing to consider is many of us, maybe not all of us, but some of us probably have duties for the state legislature. And so, the timing of this coming after state ledge is out, that might be one of the reasons why that's there. I don't want to try to, read the minds of the people who created that schedule, but I agree that this is a lot of work, and this is really important work, and I think we're going to need some time to fully bake it. So I think what I think I heard is let's go for December. Maybe recommend more time for the next commissions coming up, but if we need more time, we'll determine it at that point.
Yeah, I agree. It's only about 4 months now,
Yeah. Yeah, we have a pretty big schedule. Okay, so hearing no more comments on this discussion, we will move on to the creation of subcommittees. Following up on our discussion just now on goals, objectives, and timetable, this commission also has the ability to create subcommittees that would be able to meet in between commission meetings to discuss and address specific subject matters that are assigned to them. In commissions past, there have been subcommittees created that take a closer look at 1, classifications and rates, 2, credits and exemptions, and 3, valuation. Do the members have any thoughts on this or interest in being on any particular subcommittees should any be created? Open for discussion.
I have an interest.
What is the first one, Chair? Classification and what is the first one? I'm sorry.
So classification and rates, credits and exemptions, and then valuation is the third. Now, I actually have a recommendation that I'd like to bring up. I do think the first 2 subcommittees are still needed because I think we do want to look at classifications and rates. It's core. the credits and exemptions as well are key, because that we might be able to find some efficiency in those credits and exemptions that could pay for some other things. But on the valuation committee, in reading the prior reports, it seemed to me like looking at that was really focused on looking at valuation methodology. And it looked like there was some significant discussion about, the three different types of valuation, and really the two that BFS was using were really seemed okay to me. I mean, it looked like it was going, sort of down a rabbit hole. And I think given some of the big issues on policy that we want to look at in terms of affordability, I was going to recommend that we change the valuation subcommittee to a policy subcommittee, really looking at how we can use Oahu real property tax structure and law to bend policy in the direction that we want. And so I'd like to open it up for comments on that suggestion.
I think that Chair Wood, this is Commissioner Legal. I think that's a good suggestion because on the valuation, being on the tax appeal board, the valuation always comes up. But it seems to me that they have a pretty good system now in place, for valuation. Of course, anybody can complain, right? I mean, when your assessment is high, they're gonna say, well, you're not using the right valuation system, But it seems to me that it's been working, and I don't think we should fix something that is not broken. I mean, in my perspective, but if you change it to policy, I think you can put a lot of things in there, like affordable homes, for example, affordability. You can put in there what kind of policy do we want for affordability and other stuff, because it's a very general thing, subcommittee on policy, so we can be creative as well as effective in that sense.
This is Commissioner Wong here. A few comments on that. I respectfully disagree with that, just because I think that when we talk about the committees as they exist, the credit exemptions, the rates classifications and valuation, I think each one already goes to policy, specifically with the classification. And especially looking at the bills that we have that are pending right now in related legislation, a lot of those look like they're aimed towards adopting or implementing some sort of policy aim. I don't think that, valuation really detracts, or having that extra subcommittee would be, something too much for the commission to handle. I do think that the policy is important, but it is ever present throughout these three existing subcommittees. I think if we created a separate policy committee, it'd be worthwhile. It'd be good to look at that and good to adopt those recommendations and look at that side of the coin. But I do think that the three, when we talk about property tax valuation and assessments, it all comes down to those being the big three. And coming from my professional experience, I think my experience with valuation is a little bit different, perhaps, than maybe others on the commission. And that, the issues raised by last year's or the prior commission as to transparency, as to valuation, and how people understand their assessments come to be. I think that's just as important in terms of transparency for the government and people's understanding of how their tax dollars are not only being put to work, but being collected at the get-go. People do receive, I think, the one piece of mail that they receive regarding their taxes is their assessments every year. And I think if the city is not able to explain how they're assessing properties, then, we're not going to be able to do our job in that sense. So I think the policy subcommittee, I would support the creation of one in addition to the existing three, but I don't think it should come at the expense of the valuation committees.
Thank you, Vice Chair Wong, from your professional experience. It's good to know. Just pushing, on that a little bit, I think the way I look at it, do you see a problem in the valuation right now? Is there something that needs to be fixed on the valuation? Because my understanding from reading it is that we're employing best practices in terms of our valuation. Now, whether we're implementing that correctly is a whole other question. But in terms, it seems like we're going to an income-based type of valuation methodology for hotels and commercial properties may be an interesting thing. But I think my understanding is that, like, generally speaking, incomes are captured in sort of market-based assessments, right? Which is being used as one of the methodologies.
Right. My understanding of current assessments and valuations is that we have a market approach for the land valuation as to the buildings and the improvements. That's a cost approach. So we currently use those two approaches to value our, real property in Hawaii. As to the income approach, it's not in the ordinances right now. It's not outlined, but the courts have held that it is a valid form of valuation for appeals. And I think that if people do challenge appeals and if they have a down year as to using a property, or if, the income that it can be derived from a property is really affecting its highest and best use, the income approach should be available to them on appeal. I mean, maybe not to the appraisers and maybe not at the initial outset of issuing assessments, but they should be able to use it because it is a valid form of valuation. And I think that, even though that it's not, being used for mass valuation, because I don't think we expect the appraisers to go to every single property and to develop an income approach for every single use, and that goes down too many rabbit holes. I think that, if somebody does appeal it and they bring up a valid, valuation of their property using the income method, it shouldn't be ignored. I think that we want taxpayers to be engaged in their, into how their properties are valued. And if they come to the board of review or to the tax court with something in hand that they've worked hard on or they paid money for, then it should at least be acknowledged.
Thank you.
This is Commissioner Pham. Regarding the Valuation Subcommittee, looking at the agenda and the pending legislation, I don't see any bills that were put in front of us that have to do with valuation. So is that a reason to not, or can we go outside of these bills that were put in front of us and look at valuation?
We have carte blanche to chart our own course. We can go beyond the bills that have been put before us, for sure. So there's nothing holding us back. I mean, there's nothing holding us back from doing 4 committees, and adding different bills and crafting our scope to our preference. So, I mean, I think what I'm hearing is a strong preference to maintain evaluation, and maybe we rename it so it's a little more clear, something like valuation and appraisals. Or, I mean, can
Maybe
Vice Chair Wong think of something that might give us a better idea of what he's thinking in terms of the valuation committee and what he wants to get out of it?
I mean, my English teacher would say that don't use 2 words when 1 word is well enough. So I would just keep it as valuation. I think that's probably the best way. I don't think there's another. I think policy wise, I mean, we can go towards, how we want the system to work for residents. And I think that's distinct from valuation. And so are the classifications and rates, because no matter how the property is valued, the classification is gonna, run the way it does, and the credits and exemptions are gonna function the way they do. So I think it's really just a distinct category in its own.
So I have a question, Chair Wood, to Commissioner Wong. So what will be the task of the policy subcommittee if we add policy subcommittee?
I think I raised this earlier when I thought that policy would be included in all of these committees in its own way. I mean, I think that policy is an important consideration, but it's really such a large term. Policy, when you think about it, is such a macro kind of concept. And I think we can adopt a larger policy, but that recommendation is going to have to be applied ultimately through these 3 subsets. I mean, whatever policy we decide to include in our report, whether that is, taxing vacant properties or something, I think that goes to the classification, right? Or if we want to encourage home exemptions or encourage first-time home buyers, that will go to the credits and exemptions. Or if we want to, I don't know, if we want to make Hawaii, property tax rates lower and without actually lowering the rates, we can look at the valuation and see if they adequately reflect the market. But I think that the policy goals of the commission are to be reflected throughout those three subcommittees because they're a little more concrete. The policy goals can be outlined at the start and the outset, but each of those three smaller subsets and smaller, I guess, criterion are the ways that we would implement those policy goals.
So I think what I was thinking with the policy was, committee was, we've heard from the community that they want to know how real property taxes can be used as a policy measure, right, to achieve goals, right? So it's really about, looking at kind of overarching goals, taking the, efficiency and equity overarching goals and like sort of making those more concrete. That's kind of how I was seeing that, and I was seeing the other committees as more, the classification and rates and the credits and exemptions is more kind of instrumental, and then a little bit like more in the weeds. Valuation to me looked like it was, it got sort of contentious when I was reading the subtext of what was going on. So that's sort of why I was thinking about moving away from that. I think there's nothing stopping us from adding a commission. So I think I would probably recommend adding a, policy commission and leaving valuation in there if we can handle it. And if for some reason one of those is superfluous and doesn't have enough work, we can always dissolve that subcommittee and focus our attention where we need to. Does that sound like a plan for people? Does that sound like we can do it?
Chair Wood, I'm kind of still stuck with the word policy, and also from the sharing of Commissioner Wong. It seems, correct me if I'm wrong, Commissioner Wong, this is just my interpretation of what you're saying, that each subcommittee now, like classification, valuation, it seems to me, just for me, is that when you come up with a certain suggestion, that each subcommittee will have a policy, how to apply that. Is that what it means? Is that what you're saying? That each subcommittee will have its own policy? Like we talk about classification, for example, and we have recommendations. So we have a policy on how it's going to be enforced, how it's going to be handled, whatever, Is that am I reading you right, Commissioner Wong, or?
Almost. I could have been clearer on that. I think each subcommittee deals with a facet or a different, element of the real property tax, I guess, system that we have. And they're all like different tools, from a different toolbox. We can use rates and classifications as tools to implement one sort of policy, credits and exemptions as tools for another policy, and valuations as tools for another policy. And I think that having a policy subcommittee would be worthwhile. And, if we had a report that could go at the front of the report, this is what we want to adopt, this is what we want to change. And, these are the tools that we have. And we had different committees look at the ways that we could adopt these tools and use them within our current system to try and implement these policy goals. Does that make more sense? Not exactly.
I'm still trying. I'm still
That
trying to
makes more
wrap
sense to
my
me.
head around it, because it just seems to me that the policy subcommittee looks like it's going to be like a summary of these other subcommittees, and that's how I understand it. I'm going to think more about it for a while, Commissioner Wong. Okay.
If I think of a better way to describe it, I'll try.
Yeah. Yes.
I have a question. This is Commissioner Bean in regards to valuation and past recommendations. Is there looking at the valuation subcommittee, they spelled out pretty clearly what their recommendations were in their, I believe it's the 2019 recommendations. And I was wondering, is there a metrics that was applied to this to see whether any of these recommendations were actually completed?
That's a very good question, Commissioner Bean. We're going to look into that. We're going to take a look at past reports. I think that's one of the recommendations for our, work plan going forward is let's look at the past reports and find out what was acted upon and what's still pending. And
That-
Commission Aide White has agreed to start that research. Thank you.
Thank you.
Very good suggestion. I've actually had other folks, council members ask me that same question, so be in the right place. So I think we have 4 committees. I think that would be my recommendation, and we'll assess things as we go, and if there's a committee that's not working, that's not doing as much work for some reason, we'll adjust accordingly. We have that flexibility, correct? I think that's a good suggestion. I like the way you're framing policy, Vice Chair Wong. And if you're willing to take on valuation, then okay. Is there a motion to create a subcommittee on valuation? Is there a second? Is there a motion?
I move. Yeah, creation of a valuation committee.
Is there a second?
Second.
Absent objection to this motion, do we have unanimous consent to create a subcommittee on valuation?
Yes.
Yes.
The motion passes. Is there a motion to create a subcommittee on policy?
I move creation of a policy subcommittee.
I second that, Commissioner Wong, but I gotta think about it more. Thank you.
Absent objection to this motion, do we have unanimous consent to create a subcommittee on policy? Is there a motion to create a subcommittee? Oh, the motion passes. Is there a motion to create a subcommittee on classification and rates?
I move
So
for the
moved.
creation of a subcommittee on classification and rates.
Is there a second?
Second.
Absent objection to this motion, do we have unanimous consent to create a subcommittee on classification and rates? The motion passes. Is there a motion to create a subcommittee on credits and exemptions?
I move to create a subcommittee on.
Is there a
Yeah.
second?
Second.
Absent objection to this motion, do we have unanimous consent to create a subcommittee on credits and exemptions?
Yes.
The motion passes. As the chair, parliamentary practice allows for me to float between these respective subcommittees and not be a formal member of any. In light of that fact, and in the spirit of the Sunshine Law, each subcommittee can have up to 3 members. Are there any members that wish to volunteer for the subcommittee on valuation?
I volunteer.
I volunteer as well.
Wong, Commissioner Wong, Commissioner Bean?
Sure, I have a question first. So earlier in the meeting, the topic of vacancy tax or open home tax came up, and we had testimony from Church of Crossroads. Which committee would that tax fall under? Would that be policy or would that be classification?
I think it would be in policy, but also there would be an element of it that's classification.
Because it may not be a new classification, it might just be
Right, so
totally tax.
the way I understand it, there's a portion of that that's done through classification, but there's an overarching, there's an overarching policy goal, which is housing affordability and so housing supply. That's a prerogative. So these committees will overlap, right, and work with each other.
The reason I ask is I find that topic quite interesting. I think that's one of those committees that I'd like to volunteer for.
So I think if you want to, if you want to be part of that conversation, probably being on the policy and the classification committees would be interesting for you, would be my recommendation. Peters for policy and classification? Commissioner Peters?
Yes, if possible.
All right, so in valuation, we have Wong and Bean. Anyone else want to step up in the evaluation? It's fine with just, oh, I thought I said up. It's fine with just two. Okay, so if no one else joins, that's our evaluation committee.
I'd
Policy
also like to
committee,
make a comment, this Commissioner Pham. We are missing a commissioner right now, Storma Gibson. So perhaps Commissioner Storma Gibson might
point.
want to
Well,
step
yeah.
into one of these roles. Yep.
we'll make sure that Commissioner Stormo Gibson will be able to join committees and we'll work it out at that point. For the purposes of this meeting, we'll go through and do this, but knowing that we'll be flexible to make amendments and changes along the way. Thank you for that. Is anybody else interested in rates and classification?
This Commissioner Pham, I volunteer.
Commissioner Legal, classification rates.
Okay, so classification and rates is Legal, Peters, Pham. So who do we have for, do we have some policy? We have Peters. Do we have anyone else volunteering for policy? Okay, well, we'll leave that. If that's the only one, then we'll fold it into other ones. Yeah, okay. Do we have anyone for credits and exemptions?
Commissioner Pham, volunteer.
Commissioner Wong, also volunteer.
Okay. So based on that, an absent objection, I hereby name Commissioners Wong and Bean to serve on the Valuation Committee. And are there any members that wish, based on that, an absent objection, I hereby name Commissioners Peters, Pham, and Legal, rates and classifications. Based on that, an absent objection, I hereby name Commissioners Peters to the Policy Subcommittee. And lastly, based on that and an absent objection, I hereby name Commissioners Pham and Wong on credits and exemptions. Thank you. At this time, members, I would like to ask Commission Aide George White from the Office of Council Services to please share with us a brief overview of pending measures before the council related to real property tax. Members, are there, oh. Commission Aide White.
Aloha, members. Are you able to hear me?
Yes.
Let me see whether I can do this without. And remote. Okay, I'll try to be. Mind if we switch? Okay, this will be easier. Sorry, commissioners. Aloha, and thank you all for being here. I will try to be as brief as possible to get us through this. I previously, or prior to today's meeting, just provided you a very, very simple snapshot of the pending legislation before the City Council currently. I have grouped these matters, and I'm going to walk you through the rubric or chart so that we can understand the pending bills. I have all of the bills here, but I didn't want to overload you by sending them to you. There's, a lot of different things to read through, but I summarized them in this chart and rubric, and pretty much hopefully it makes sense. If you have specific questions regarding certain matters, if you have certain queries or matters that you want looked into further regarding a specific bill, just email me, let me know. It is in the interest of efficiency that I don't want to drag you guys through all 20 bills or whatever they might be, especially if there may be no interest in the commission or possibly an interest among the council to look at certain matters. And you'll see what I'm discussing as we go through this, but in the interest of being upfront and open with the commission, I wanted to give you all the pending matters, and I believe there may be one additional bill that was just recently introduced, and I will not speak to that until I have an opportunity to formally review it and that it's just been introduced. But that is specific to a real property tax exemption specific to condominiums and related to installation of installation of fire sprinklers and related to that issue. But again, I will discuss that and brief that for you at another commission meeting once the bill has been formally vetted. It has not, I don't believe, had a first hearing yet. Okay. So very briefly going through this pending property tax related legislation. The matters are organized essentially by topic. And you'll see under topic, there's a bold phrase. Classification is one, relief is another, and exemptions is another. So walking through each matter, I think the classification issue is one of the issues that is at top of mind, it appears, of the commission to look at. And it's also a current topic as Chair, if I may acknowledge the presence of Administrator Takara. Commissioners, I just also would like to thank and acknowledge the presence of a real property administrator, Takara, who is here with us this afternoon. He is available to the commission if they have any questions. Should Administrator Takara have any comments on any of these pending bills, he is more than welcome to chime in, but we do appreciate his presence here. So very briefly, the first four matters, Bill 20 from 2021, Bill 31, 2021, and Bill 4, 2020, all address the real property or residential A real property tax classification. Now, Bill 2021 and Bill 4, 2020 are essentially not the same, but essentially doing similar types of things. And all that really is Bill 2021 adjusts the metrics and the tiering of the residential A classification from $1 million to a $1.3 million threshold. It also creates additional tiers for properties or a category of properties valued over $5 million. You'll note that in the notes section, which is for you all if you have notes you want to take, whatnot, but in brackets are the initials of the council member who introduced that bill. Sometimes multiple council members will introduce the bill. So in this case, RC stands for Councilmember Radiant Cordero. For Bill 4, 2020, Councilmember Carol Fukunaga, and the BR stands for by request. With regards to the one other matter of residential A real property tax classification introduced by Councilmember Cordero, all that bill does is add additional zoning categories to the residential A classification definition. So the definition of what residential A is would potentially, if the bill were to pass, include parcels in the preservation 1 and 2 zones, as well as country classifications. Turning to Bill 76 from 2020, this would be I believe the first vehicle that was discussed and the only current vehicle regarding the vacant residential properties. So it essentially established a category for vacant residential properties, and it would be taxed at a rate as determined by the Real Property Assessment Division. Of relevance would include the definition, which I noted in the summary, of what vacant residential means. Some of the discussion I believe that the commission may look into and in evaluating this specific bill includes how you define vacant residential. What types of properties and parcels are included? Does that include condominium dwellings, single unit dwellings? There have been questions already beginning to be posed. What is the extent of number of properties that are applicable under definition as is, or if there's a different definition, what would catch a number of parcels or pieces of property? So those are all within the ambit of your all's discussion regarding the bill, but also more generally the concept of taxing vacant residential properties. And how you define that is basically the big issue. Currently, as written, the proposed bill includes 5 exemptions from that vacant residential definition, which is for extended medical care, recent transfer of property under probate, major renovations to the property that preclude it from being inhabited, court-ordered prohibition on occupancy. So essentially, court says you can't go on the property. And that essentially covers the bills that discuss classification. As these bills themselves, I will link on the Commission's website so that you have access to them. But essentially, if you have questions or if you want something looked into, email me and we can follow up regarding a specific bill. Again, the Commission is not bound by the bills pending before the Council. The Council chair has asked for the Commission to give input on bills, and you can choose which bills you wish to opine upon, if you want to opine on all of them, or certain ones that you don't wish to opine upon. Turning next to property tax relief, we can zip through these pretty quickly because they're all similarly related, and some of them are pretty simple. Bill 3, 2021, property tax relief, essentially provides real property tax relief to homeowners who acquire real property directly as a result of the death of the previous owner of record of the property. That was introduced by Council Chair Waters. It's a relatively new bill, but has not been has not had additional hearings yet. Turning to Bills 9 from 2020, as well as Bills 31 from 2020, Bills 41 from 2020. I would ask the members to note that on the right-hand column of the introducers, those introducers are italicized because they are council members that are no longer council members as their terms have expired. So former council member Kimberly Pine, former council member Joey Monahan, and former council member Ann Kobayashi. Those initials reflect bills that they had introduced, and the charter requires that bills have a 2-year lifespan. If no action is taken, the bill is then filed and would need to be reintroduced by a new council member. I don't speak for the council, neither does Chair Mould, and we also don't speak for Budget Chair Say. Whether or not Budget Chair decides to hear a measure, he can pull that matter up because it's pending before his committee, or he may decide he wishes to reintroduce a different measure under his name or some other council member's name. Bills 9, 31, and 41 specifically provide for real property tax relief for affordable housing, in which they're basically you dedicate a parcel of property for a specified period of time, and you have to give the government an opportunity to buy it back if you're going to try and sell it after. again, these measures have not been moving since the new council was inaugurated. Bill 31, 2020, also a relatively simple measure, but provides real property tax relief for industrial real property with limited city services. Essentially, it establishes a valuation cap on those specific properties. Bill 41, 2020, essentially was a COVID-19 measure introduced by council members Pine and Manahan at the time. But essentially it was just a measure to seek deferral options on property tax bills due to the impact of COVID-19 and the impact of the emergency orders that impacted their ability to operate and generate income. I believe Administrator Takara may have input on this, but the administration did take extensive efforts to help taxpayers and help the real property taxpayers with various options to basically space out their payments and did certain measures such that this bill appeared not to be necessary, and there were concerns of just a generalized deferral as opposed to spacing out payments. And I believe that the administration was successful in helping all taxpayers, but including business taxpayers, to get through the challenging times, which we still are facing, though. So that Bill 41 is still relevant. However, it may need to be adjusted or looked into further if you wish. Turning last to property tax exemptions, this may be a desire of the commission to specifically take a look at the whole field of exemptions that are given or that are on the books, what the financial impacts are of those exemptions, what the financial reality is, how much the city is not getting as a result of these exemptions. Some of these that are pending before the council have been controversial, others not so much. But specifically looking at Bill 11 from 2020, that addresses a repeal of a exemption for credit unions. Bill 12 from 2020 also looks to amend the exemption provided to historic residential real property that is dedicated for preservation, essentially setting a $1,000 cap on the amount for real property tax that can be assessed. Bill 16 from 2020 addresses the tax exemption for-profit group child care centers. It sets a base of $300, a cap at $1,000. Bill 30 addresses the real property tax exemption for-profit group child centers also. You'll notice Councilmember Elefante introduced Bill 16. Councilmember Manahan, our former Councilmember Manahan, introduced Bill 30. The difference between the two was that one repealed the exemption, and Councilmember Elefante's measure, Bill 16, established a base and a ceiling. Lastly, the last two matters, Bill 34 and Bill 81. Bill 34 by Councilmember Fukunaga is similar in principle to a measure we discussed already, which was, I believe, Bill 9 from 2020, which was to provide real property tax relief for certain properties as long as there's a dedication for a specified period of time for affordability and the government having an opportunity to buy back the property or buy the property before it be sold. Both of those measures are nearly identical. Again, that's Bill 34, 2020 and Bill 9, 2020. And then lastly, Bill 81, 2020 from former Councilmember Kim Pine provided certain tax relief for properties that are used as community gardens. I don't believe the commission or the council has taken any action on those matters. But those are the pending matters. If certain bills pique your interest, you can feel free to follow up with me and we can discuss them in more detail. But this just gives you the basic outline of what measures are before the council, and I believe that Chair Mould can discuss with you his sense as to how budget chairs say or how the council is viewing the commission's work as it relates to pending legislation moving forward.
Members, are there any questions for Mr. White?
Mr. White, Commissioner Legal, just a clarification on Bill 41, 2020. It didn't pass? Or yours is different? Bill 41, 2020, tax relief for COVID-19.
Yes, Commissioner Legal, and I believe if Administrator Takara has any input, it did not pass, but I believe that there was extensive conversations between the administration and the council at a time, and the administration came up with various proposals in which the council was amenable or agreeable to. Basically, the administration set up various payment plans and options to extend out the timing in which property tax bills were due. I'll let Administrator Takara speak as he was instrumental in that.
No, I think you summed it up correctly, that in lieu of Bill 41, BFS administration came up with a deferred payment plan, or you had 90 days from the due date to pay such property tax obligation without penalty or interest if it's been paid in full within the 90 days. So they're allotted the 90-day time period to pay in full, and if you exceeded that, then whatever balance, I believe whatever balance was not paid, you're subject to penalty and interest at that point. But I think you summed it up great. Thank you.
Thank you. That was my understanding. Thank you so much.
Thank you. No more questions? Mahalo, Mr. White. Okay, moving on to a discussion item. Members, based upon the goals, objectives, and timetable of the commission and its subcommittees, I would like to open the floor to addressing a few specific questions. What type and depth of information should we be seeking out and evaluating over the coming months? What subject matter experts should we consider contacting for information, presentations, or testimony? And what are some options for efficiently researching, accessing, synthesizing, and sharing this information? So just a little background, I don't think we need to figure this all out today in this meeting, but I just wanted to get members thinking about how we're going to go about doing our work and the types of information we're going to be seeking out and how we're going to be, putting basically a research and, plan together to get to that information. So that was my thought behind this. We can discuss this as much as you guys want now, but really I think this might be sort of an ongoing discussion. So the floor is now open for discussion of these questions. Are there any suggestions of like individuals that come to mind that we should be talking to and asking for testimony from?
I would recommend the Honolulu Board of Realtors for the classification, because they did testify before, on this issue. So maybe you should invite them as well.
And just, thank you. We do have access, Commission Aide White, is going to help us out with our research requests as well, and the Office of Council Services. So we do have use of that as well. So thank you everyone for that. I mean, just please think about going forward, the types of information we're going to need to make these critical decisions and to write this report. And if we need to bring someone in, so this probably might be an ongoing kind of topic in our meetings of research plan, people to invite, things like that going forward. So if anyone else does, if that's it, does anyone else have anything to add on this topic?
I just want to give some appreciation to Chair Mold for providing some reading materials before the day's meeting. I think that if everybody else could follow that form and that procedure going forward, it helps a lot to, read into things before they're presented at these meetings. And I appreciated having the chance to do that before coming today.
Thank you.
I have a
I have
question.
I have a, go ahead.
Go ahead, Tracy. Go ahead.
Go ahead, Commissioner
No, go
Bean.
ahead.
No, just my
Okay.
question is, this is Commissioner Legal. On the subcommittee, who's supposed to call the meeting, our meetings?
Commissioner Aid White.
Yes, Commissioner Legal, members of subcommittees are welcome to meet as they please. The only thing that chair requests, or that I, as your aide, advise, is that each subcommittee provide a brief summary and report of any meeting that takes place at the next meeting of the full commission. So regarding your subcommittees that you've been selected to or that you're part of, you all can meet as you please, when you please, wherever you please. All that we ask is that when you do so, you provide a brief summary of your meeting and what was discussed. And that would, you don't need to give that necessarily right away, but as long as at the next meeting you provide that information either orally or even in writing, that's the only extent or limitation or expectation of your subcommittee meetings. Does that answer your question, Commissioner?
Yes, I would like to ask Commissioner Pham to organize our first meeting.
Will do.
And thank you.
Thank
Commissioner
you,
Legal.
Commissioner Pham.
Commissioner Legal, you made one good point, though, that I forgot to mention. To the extent that you all wish or desire, I would ask that you keep me looped in as your aide regarding these meetings. If you do not want me present, you don't need me present. You can just say, no need George to be present. If you would like me to be present, I will make myself available to be present, just either as a record keeper or whatnot. But I am not required to be present. But if you would like me to be there, feel free to let me know, and I'll make sure to plan accordingly.
We want George to be present.
And I'd like to, if you guys could copy me, that'd be great. To give me an opportunity to listen into your meetings. This is Chair Mold as well. I'm very interested in all of your work. Administrator Takara, do you have? Would you like to come to the floor? You have something to say?
Yeah. Just to echo Mr. White's offering, that I'm offering to be available in all such subcommittees meetings, as well as formal or informal as they may be. I'll try to make myself available if needed or as needed as well.
Thank you, Administrator Takara. I would highly recommend people take up that offer, given the information that we can get out of Steve.
Just give me a fair warning, couple of days. I don't know. Thanks.
Thank you. Commissioner Bean, did you have something?
Two things. The first has to do with the COVID precautions. In terms of meeting, can we meet at the city council? Is there a room that we could meet at, or do the precautions prevent us from meeting there? And then secondly, in regards to the vacancy tax, my understanding is that Maui County has already passed a similar bill. Is that correct? And if so, could we get testimony from them in regards to what they're experiencing with that?
We'll put that on our to-do list. Thank you, Commissioner Bean. Yeah.
Commissioner Bean, if I can just briefly follow up to your administrative questions. As Chair Mould indicated, we will follow up regarding your request on the Maui matter, and I can pull the measure as well as a summary of testimony that was done on the measure. That's not a problem. Specifically regarding your query on meetings, first, I imagine each of you are pretty adept at virtual meetings by this point, but I am also happy to facilitate scheduling of WebEx meetings. I can probably figure out Zoom too for you all if it would be helpful. If you would like to meet in council premises or on council premises, Honolulu Hale, we can make a room available. At this time, the chair of the council has indicated that you all, as an advisory body, are officials for city purposes or for the city council's purposes. So you are allowed, even though there is a current policy recently enacted that limits presence in Honolulu Hale to staff of the legislative branch, elected officials, and members of the administration. But you all, according to the chair of the council, have been deemed as officials. So if a meeting space is needed here, I can help facilitate that. There is a general kind of recommendation right now that's not policy-based, but just essentially we urge remote and we urge distance if possible. But if you would like a room here, we can make that happen.
Thank you.
And I actually have a Zoom account that I'll donate to the council for use, and I'll share that Zoom account with folks, and so we can set that up for people. I'll talk with George about how to implement that. Any other questions, comments? Okay, so just think of people we want to talk to and materials out there and research queries you want to make, please. So moving on, members, are there any announcements? Okay, moving on to scheduling of the next meeting. Subcommittees are welcome to meet as they please. The only thing the chair requests is that each subcommittee provide a brief summary. Commission Aide White already provided that information. So basically just reiterating that please, meet as you will and as you want to, but please provide a report to us at the next meeting. And please feel free to bring in Administrator Takara, Commission Aide White, and please CC me if you can. I would appreciate that very much. With that said, I'd like to open the floor to discussion about the next meeting of the commission. Floor is open. Anyone want to try to meet 3 weeks from today for the next commission meeting?
Yeah.
Folks remote, thumbs up sign or thumbs down?
3 weeks from today.
Yeah, let me. Yeah, 3 weeks from today would be what day?
September 7th.
So shall we try for September 7th? Does 2 p.m. work for people still?
September 7. Hold on. Yeah, that's fine. September 7 at 2 p.m.
Let me check my schedule real quick, sorry. Works for me. So shall we go for Tuesday, September 7th at 2 p.m.?
2 p.m. Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, absent any objection, that's what we'll do. Okay, commissioners, there being no further business today, is there a motion to adjourn?
I move that we adjourn.
Motion to adjourn by Commissioner Peters
Seconded.
and seconded by Commissioner Bean. There being no objections, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you all for being here. See you all at our next meeting, if not before.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Pham. Talk to you later.
Talk to you later.
Yeah.